What I'm going to do first is I'm going to introduce the topics. And then I would like each of our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. Again, my name is John Gilliland, and I'm chairman of the Department of Public Policy Administration at Jackson State University. And I've always been excited about being a part of this show. It definitely serves public service value. So the topics that we're going to discuss tonight in this order. Initially, we're going to talk about the importance of social distancing. This is a significant topic. I just heard that the CDC says that they estimated that we've had 25 million infections so far. The second items will be regarding Black Lives Matters, defunding of the police, and setting the agenda for the elimination of racism. Exciting topics. So I'd like for our guests, starting with Dr. Thompson, to introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Erica Thompson. I serve as the Executive Director for Magnolia Medical Foundation and as the Medical Advisor for Women for Progress on Health Matters. So I'm glad to be here this evening.
Don't trip over yourself introducing yourselves. Dr. Minka.
Your mic not on.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just saying, I don't really refer to myself as a doctor, but I'm an attorney. I know that lawyers, they have a Juris Doctorate, and many of them hold themselves out as doctors, but I don't do that. But my name is Adolfo Minka. I'm a public defender in Hinds County, and I've been an activist and writer and commentator, that kind of thing. So thanks for having me today, and excited to engage in the conversation.
Hey, Dr. McGinnis?
Well, again, I'm not a doctor. Celie McGinnis, I am a poet and short story writer. That's what I do by trade. I also teach creative writing and a couple other lit courses at Jackson State University. I'm proud of being from Clarksdale, Mississippi, home of the blues.
I know I'm going to mess up this name, so let's try.
Let me introduce myself then.
Okay.
I am Baba Lukata, and I am a injustice agitator. Most of you refer to that kind of work as community activists, but I'm an injustice agitator. And
we're going to have some more discussion about that. That's an interesting title. Dr. Phillips, are you with us yet? Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. I would have never believed that we would ever see what's happening in this country in my lifetime. I've been watching, reading episode after episode of death by police in this country, and specifically Black men and Black women. And it appeared as though that society was insensitive to it. But I want to talk about what changed. What was the tipping point? Or better, why was George Floyd the tipping point? And I think I would like to start this discussion with Attorney Minka. Dr. Thompson, I started this off, I inverted my agenda So I apologize to you. We'll get back on track here shortly, okay? Attorney Minga.
Right. Well, within the insurgent period, and that's what I would call this particular period, a period of insurgency. Anytime you have people out in the streets, burning property, fighting the police, calling for, speaking out against the injustices that are happening in society, not only police killings, but the exploitation of capitalism and social degradation. I just think it's a result of years and years of people being exploited, people being degraded, and then you have this kind of situation where you got this global pandemic of the COVID-19 or coronavirus. And I think these things all coming together in this particular time period, it just created a powder keg where people were already feeling frustrated. You had many people losing their jobs, some people losing their homes, and the future just seeming bleak for many people economically in this particular time, given all that is going on. And you have people, the powder keg could easily be lit. So I think that these murders, not only George Floyd, but Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, there was some other ones in the Maryland, D.C. area of some African immigrants that happened that didn't get as much publicity. But all of these things kind of came together and kind of created a powder keg kind of situation. And that's what we have as a result of it. We have people out in the streets in this insurgent period, and we'll see where it goes. We hope it can be sustained and move to a higher level of struggle that will help bring about people bringing about this idea of designing a new society, one where justice is at the center of it, and people can control their own lives and control their own political, economic, judicial, and social, ecological affairs.
I want to open the discussion up to everyone. I just want to do it in order. There's a question that we've been asking for decades, and we talked about the importance of Martin and his value to us, but very rarely do we talk about how Martin was counterbalanced against Malcolm X and the Black Panthers. So my question would be, do you think that this environment would have happened without the disruption, the breakage, the burning, the looting? Do you think that peaceful protests works? Does it need to be accompanied by all of the things that came with this episode?
Well, I would say that it's really a two-part question. Because one of the things that you have to understand is that in this moment, we have to understand the difference between mobilizing and organizing. So that's the very first thing. I think a lot of times people see a rally or they see a march or they see, a mass, a lot of people, and they confuse mobilizing with organizing, right? And so I think that's the first point that I think we have to understand. And it thanks to what Attorney Minka said about hoping that it's sustained. The only thing that's going to sustain it is if now the mobilization actually turns into true organizing, where you can get some legitimate legal legislative changes to fundamentally dismantle the white supremacist institution that is America. Now, but to answer your specific question, I would say, unfortunately, no. I think that there's a direct correlation between what happened that night in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and those officers being charged for a crime. Now, I'm not saying that that's how I want all change to happen. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that's not what, but I will also say that it's about time that not only white folks get to say, give me liberty or give me death, right? It's time that not only white people a white man was at an Obama rally with his pistol shown in his holster, with a sign that said, "Sometimes the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of the tyranny." So I don't want this to always be the way of change, but I don't think that we would see the amount of change that we have without, unfortunately, as again, Attorney Minka said, and I'll end with this, for all the people who love, the people who I'd say love to hide their cowardice behind their Christianity. The prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah say throughout the entire book, if you have a corrupt government, then violence and this kind of chaos will exist. So for everyone who says, why is this happening? I tell them, read your own Bible. Because both the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah said, when you have a corrupt government, you can only have this type of violence and tyranny in the streets.
Well, I would just say, in terms of, I really wouldn't call it tyranny that we see in the streets. I would call it the self-organized, rebellious activity of ordinary people that we see in the streets. Because many people have disparaged the activity of ordinary people in the street, both black and white, who have gone, because the act, well, we have to understand the act, what the statement of the act is saying. It's saying that we're placing the value of human life above the property rights of the elites in this society. Many times you've had black people coming out and saying, oh, they destroying property, they destroying their community. The thing you have to understand is black people don't own the Wendy's. Black people didn't own the Target.
Right.
That's owned by the capitalist rulers of this society. And even where you had black people in certain communities who destroyed black enterprises, and you have black people crying about that, saying that, oh, they destroying these black businesses. Many times these black businesses have not supported any kind of radical movement, because they benefit from the same kind of exploitative relationships that white capital enjoys. Now, I'm not saying that some of these businesses, they have as much capital as a place like Target or Walmart or some of these larger corporations that can be targeted. But some of these people, they have the same mindset of exploitation and degradation of the labor of ordinary working class, unemployed people in the community. So the question initially was, do we think that this could have come about by peaceful means? Well, the idea of a protest is to cause a disruption. So no, it wouldn't have been able to come about by peaceful means, and it shouldn't have been able to be brought about by peaceful means. When America, when it wants to do things, they don't bring it about by peaceful means. They bring it about by violence, killing, exploitation, expropriation. When they go in these countries, or even when they send the National Guard in, when they send the police, when they send the shock troops in, they not coming in peacefully or non-violently. So this, as Malcolm X said over 50 years ago, this is the language that the oppressor understands.
Right.
So even with this, I don't really think any change is coming about, because we saw this same kind of thing happen in Ferguson and Baltimore, where you had people go out in the street and fight against the police and destroy property. But then they brought a certain level of kind of activists in. They brought them in from in the cold, and then they went and cut a backdoor deal with the cultural apparatus of the Democratic Party to steer people away from rebelliousness and struggle and disruption of this system that has us all basically enslaved on a class basis. Because
let me ask you this question. Given and I think I'm gonna pronounce it Baba. You mind if I say Baba because I'm gonna have problems together? Is that okay? Thank you so much. Now, so what's different? You just brought up what happened in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
This is entirely different.
What do
let me
you know?
chime in for Mike.
It's entirely different. This outrage is worldwide. It's black, it's yellow, it's brown, and it's white.
Yes.
That's one of the differences. I didn't see that happen in Baltimore. It didn't happen that way in Baltimore. All of a sudden, in the beginning, as we were watching what was playing out on the streets, we saw more whites than we'd ever seen in any of our movements that I can remember since the 1960s. And you have to remember, I'm an old man. So how do we, how do we account for the all people outrage that we've seen? It's not just black people that's outraged. And I want you to think about that one, Attorney, because I want to talk to my agitator.
I appreciate that. I think one of the things that we want to do is go back to a couple of things that was already said. First of all, Seeley, I think, was the one who mentioned the idea of organizing versus spontaneous reaction.
Right.
And I think that's where we are with this protest right now. Even though it's been going on for a month, it's still running off of emotion. And there's very little organizing that is going on, so that the ideas that will change the dynamic of this society have not fully come out. Because we got to keep in mind, another thing that Malcolm said was, the media have you hating the good people and loving the bad people. So when we go back and look at the media is still calling the reaction of the people violent, when it is the society, when it's the structure that is agitating the violence and promoting the violence. When they come out there and throw tear gas and rubber bullets and all of these kind of things at people, they don't call that violence. They call that the structure, the societal structure responding to violence, when there was no violence until they came out there. The other thing that we want to make sure that we don't forget, we live in a society where everything is focused on the economic impact. When COVID first started, the first thing they started talking about was the economic impact, and not the loss or the impact on human lives. It was always economic impact.
Right.
Even now, we're still talking about the economic impact and not human lives. When they were having their daily briefings, never were they encouraging the people to build up their immune system. So they're going to get COVID. I don't care who you are. You're going to get COVID. You keep in mind, when they did the autopsy on George Floyd, they said he had COVID in him. So they wanted to blame that on COVID. So COVID is in all of us. It's going to be in all of us. It's just a matter of how our bodies react to it.
Right.
On an individual basis. But again, we're not talking about the value of human life. We're talking about the economic impact of COVID. So when we put all of these pieces together and we try to decide whether or not, quote unquote, peaceful protests would have had the same response, the system was not going to allow for peaceful protest. But the media was always going to frame it in a way that the reaction of the people was violent and not the reaction of society.
Right.
So when we have these kinds of forums, we have these platforms, we can't stick to the narrative of the society. We have to tell the opposite narrative, and hopefully people will begin to rationalize and think through both sides of the story and come to their own conclusion.
Let me ask another question, and I think I would like to start this with our health specialists. One of the things that was hard was we actually watched George Floyd die. We actually saw him take his last breath. We actually saw the zeal or hatred of the officer who, I'm not a judge, who knowingly, appeared to knowingly and willfully took his life. So Dr. Thompson, what, as you deal with health, public health, that had to invoke some kind of emotion in you and what you thought that was going to mean to this community, to your community. Could you just elaborate a little bit, please?
So from a medical perspective and a public health perspective, we understand that someone said earlier that everything has a connection. There are some connections to every piece. And even in our where we live, our place, environment, everything places a role into health. Even in our judiciary systems, they have an impact on health as well. So even in the process of us, in the time, what happened to George Floyd, definitely we all know should not have happened. We understand that the force and the brutalness of the apprehension, we do believe led to part of most of that situation. Someone with their knee on your neck, air supply, not saying that you could be able to breathe when that is so essential. So when we think about how our every system plays a role in the entire part of health, meaning our communities impact our health, our place of where we live, economics do impact health. We also understand that our judiciary systems also have an impact on health, and we can kind of expand that into what we just recently heard even about our own prison here in Mississippi not even being fit to be lived in or to be occupied because of the poor health conditions. And so I think when we look at George Floyd, and I like what a lot of the conversation has led to, we can see social injustices impacting health in so many ways. And so we understand that all of those things are compounding, which actually make for public health issue completely. And so until the infrastructure and the factors of all of these public health matters kind of collide, and I think what happened with George Floyd is it was a perfect collision to a degree, where we saw social injustices impounding on health, judiciary systems, we saw economic poverty, we saw where it was disenfranchising one community, and this, we could, obviously we've been saying this would never happen in certain communities before. If this was in a different community that had a different zip code with a different economic number to it, would this have been the situation? And I think what it allows us to do is kind of, as everyone's saying, instead of just kind of looking at the big picture of the gatherings, but then what do we take from these gatherings that be a policy? From a public health perspective, that's the way that we look at it. So how do we build our policies that actually build infrastructures that create change around all of these collisions. And so from a health perspective, very unsettling to watch on a video someone take their last breath, to see certain aspects of the body just collapse in front of our eyes, and seeing that whole episodic parts of when death takes place that we saw, even the immensing of the bodily fluids on the video. All of those things are disheartening for me as a health professional, also as an African American female, also as a mother, also of a Black son. So all of those things compound into a whole lot of different emotions for me. And then on the public health side, saying, so what do we do now? Where do we build the policies that create those environments for safety, for wellness, for wholeness, for health in our communities?
Attorney Minka, we've been following, and all of you are echoing a lot of what we've been hearing about the issue in Black Lives Matter in this particular moment. One of the debates that we've been hearing recently is going on, it's the partisan debate between Democrats and Republicans. I think the Republicans Senate put forth a recommendation that was led by Senator Scott, I think from South Carolina. And they just recently, they voted yesterday not to take up debate on that bill simply because they thought it was ineffective. And I know the abolishment of chokeholds was one of the things that the Democrats put forward. You're more close to this situation than possibly any of us have been, simply because of your profession. And I'm sure that you've seen and interacted with quite a bit of this. What solutions, what legislative policy recommendations do you think that would be effective to take advantage of this time, this moment, that we may not ever get in our lifetime again? What do you offer?
Well, what I offer is that people begin to familiarize themselves with the idea of developing their own self-government to develop a new society that's not partisan, that's not based on representation. We have a republic form of government. We don't have a democracy. And when you have elite rulers, elite professional rulers who rule above society, they cannot represent the interests of ordinary people. So we see people proposing all of these reforms. All of these reforms have already been proposed before. When Eric Garner was choked to death in 2014 in Staten Island, the New York Police Department had already abolished chokehold. It was just an article released on June 6th that talked about a number of jurisdictions that had already abolished chokeholds and certain other practices in police departments. But their article concluded that even with the abolition of those kind of practices, cops, they just took a different kind of variation on some kind of hold that still caused death. So they just did the same thing in a different way and said, oh, this is not a chokehold, this is a different kind of hold, but you still have Black people being killed normatively. So the answer is not more reforms. We continue to try to Republicans have any legitimacy. That's why I'm saying that ordinary people, the working class, the unemployed, the street force, the caring mothers, they must decide that they will govern the society themselves and that they will propose the proposals for a new society and a better society, because the professionals and elite representatives, they have failed society. They are bankrupt, and they have proven that they are on the side of the slaughter. Because even here in the city of Jackson, there has not been enough said about it, but black people have been killed and shot down here. They have been beat to death. They have been choked to death. I see many clients that come into my office, and luckily they had not been killed, but they get beat up and they get brutalized by the police. So people want to make it a thing as like these are just white officers doing this. No, this is white officers, this is black officers, and it doesn't come down to an individual, it comes down to a system. People don't understand the role and function of the police. The role and function of the police is to ensure that the state apparatus maintains its monopoly on the means of coercion and violence. And then they also have the role and purposes of upholding private property relations amongst people. They protect the private property of the elites and the rulers against those who would come against them because of the imbalance of the economic situation that we have in this society. You have a very small minority of people that's controlling the resources of the society while the rest of us suffer under exploitation and degradation.
Mr. McGinnis, what would you like to see come out of this moment?
I can wait on
Unmute your line, please.
Thank you for talking about that, Doc. I would like to see a couple of things. One, as a black nationalist, as a unashamed, unabashed black nationalist, I think that while I'm all for collective movements, I think African people will have to understand that true freedom begins when you start begging your oppressor to love you. And so what I would like to see is more African Americans, more Africans dislocated in America, those of us who see ourselves as African people, to take this as an opportunity to say that this institution is built on white supremacy, was never designed to sustain us. To learn our history, that there have been at least 5 different times when the American government has stolen wealth from African people in America. And to understand that we can have our own banks, we can have our own schools, we can have our own infrastructure. And that we really start understanding that true freedom and first-class citizenship is not when you beg somebody else to be nice to you, but it's when you decide that I can create a structure on my own. And we start by letting folks know that there's a difference between integration and desegregation. Most people don't know the difference between integration and desegregation, and don't know that what black people wanted was not to be integrated, but was to be desegregated, to be treated equal under the law, as Attorney Meeker was saying. And so that's the number one thing I would like to see, right? And then I just want to add to one point that Attorney Meeker said, everything he said is great, is that as we are also restructuring the system, we have to understand that the American police system was based on slave patrols. The 2 number 1 military organizations in America, the Citadel and VMI, Virginia Military Institute, those 2 institutions that create the officers in the American military began as slave patrols. So the very institution, right, that's creating our officers. And by the way, I'm an honorably discharged person. I served in the Mississippi National Guard, right? So I have a DD-214 that says honorable discharge on it. So anybody who says, right, that I'm hating on, I'm spitting fact to you, that we need to understand that fundamentally what's wrong with our police is that it was rooted in slave patrol, as Attorney Meeker could say, and that we understand that self-determination is the only way you become a first-class citizen, and not begging your oppressor to be nice to you.
Well, Barbara, you know you're next. So what is it that, what would success look like out of this?
We have to recognize that there have been several studies that have proven that integration has not worked. hadn't worked for Africans, and it hadn't worked for Caucasians. It does not work. So when you continue to do the same thing and you're honestly expecting different results, everybody now knows that that is insanity. So when we continue to expect Jesus to come down and touch the hearts of the devil, and for that to change the devil's heart, then we are insane. So the policy that we have to work toward is separating the nation, because we have a white nation and we have a black nation. Those Africans who choose to stay with white folks, I ain't mad at you. Stay here. But understand the consequences. Those Africans who choose to self-govern, let us have that opportunity. That is the final answer. But as Malcolm said, in the meantime, we have to eat. In the meantime, we want to be sheltered. In the meantime, we want to take care of our families. So in the meantime, what we have to do is we have to make sure that we get rid of the police union. What is a blue life? We've always been raised recognizing black lives, white lives, red lives, yellow lives, and brown lives. Blue lives were created as a counter to black lives. Just like the COINTELPRO was all about counterintelligence, they created blue lives as a counter to the righteousness of black lives. So we have to be real with that. So while we're trying to work our way out of this system, we have to get rid of the police union. We have to depoliticize justice. Justice cannot be a political football. It should be a moral football. So you have to be able to recognize the value of a black life at the same level of any other life. And recognize that there is no such thing as a blue life.
You know, one of the questions that I was given tonight to deal with was it was on was how do we end racism? How do we end racism? So we can make the assumption that this movement that we're experiencing is going to take us to another place. But if we were to win from this movement, there would be a discussion about who's setting the agenda for the next step. One of the things that I've seen is I go to Florida and I find that there is competition between African Americans in Florida and Cubans. They don't seem to get along. How do we avoid, if we were to win this phase, how do we avoid fight at the next phase? In other words, who should be setting the agenda? Dr. Thompson, I'm going to start with you. Who should be setting the agenda as we try to move toward the elimination of racism?
Well, I guess one of the issues is, will we ever, one of the biggest questions should be, will we ever end racism? More so than how will we get to that point? I think that is something that is a choice that people choose of who they will decide they consider their allies and their enemies, as we could put it. The other part to that is it also is about a whole ideology of race and attitudes about a particular person or group of people, or what we consider or what we deem as our own thoughts about those groups of people and what they mean and their contributions, etc. And so when people judge others based on many times on things that are not even sometimes thought of as a way of what they know to be factual sometimes. So I think that when some people look at the Black race, they immediately think of things that have a negative connotation sometimes when looked at from other viewpoints. And so we know that that's not the case and that's not true. And so I think that once again, we engage ourselves in the radical rethinking of folks' attitudes towards race. What would those major changes be? And someone said we can create policy around a lot of things, but many times we can't change the heart of people. We could remove the flag in Mississippi, but we may not change the heart of the people who still believe in what that flag denotes for them. And so I think that comes with stakeholders, and I like what Attorney Minka said about people have to have some ownership in what that story will feel. And so I think whenever there's policy to be made or changes to be made, there have to be people that come to the table who are willing and open-minded and willing to put sometimes their own ideas and views and ideologies, things that have been implanted from generation to generation inside of them of what they believe of other race. And I think we then have to come to a point of those stakeholders coming together to decide what are the things that we will agree on. So someone mentioned about, taking that ownership. We do have to have some ownership in that, and that we write our stories about what we want to see as an economic society. What do we want to see as for our schools? What are the things that we want to have for our own levels of Wall Street or economy and commerce? What are those things? And so that brings about people having to come to a table and have conversation. And sometimes I think that everyone has their ideas of what that looks like, but bringing stakeholders to the table to actually flush those things out brings about conversations that sometimes are very difficult. They may also bring about conversations that are uncomfortable. I was talking to someone and they were sharing about one of their friends said that, they couldn't believe, they did not realize that Black people had this particular struggle. And it was uncomfortable for them to have this discussion. Well, we've been uncomfortable for a while, so, how do we have these conversations where sometimes our uncomfort has to be ruffled, and we have to come to a place where we are okay to bring all of these things to a place of table, still being very diplomatic, that we not get so into our emotions, as Baba said, that we actually come out with something that we tangibly have in our hands that we're going to work toward. And with policies, true enough, we write policies, but how many times do we go back to reinforce those things to make sure that people are still doing what they say they're supposed to do? And that's where those stakeholders come, who hold people accountable, that hold their feet to the fire and say, hey, this is what we want, this is what we need, and these are the changes that we're requesting. And so I think that all of that brings about a collectiveness. It is different. Someone said there's this picture that I've seen about equality versus equity. Equality is just taking me to the baseball game. That doesn't mean I can't see over the fence. Right. But equity gives me a straight playing field where we all can see at the same place, which is something totally different. So I don't want just your equality. I want things to be equitable, where when we come to the playing field, we all get the same view of the baseball field. and it doesn't matter what color so all of those things really play a role. And I think it does take, as Attorney Minka say, the people taking responsibility, coming together and creating what you want to see. And that sometimes can make some folks uncomfortable. But so what? So I think those are some of the things that we have to realize in this time.
Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, sir.
Let's change the subject just a little bit, because I know we're getting closer to the time for our hour, end of the hour. And I'd like to start this discussion with you about what does defunding the police mean?
Well, and I think that's, coming back to what everybody said, right? Bob Lucata, Attorney Minka, and Dr. Thompson, right? That the whole question when we talk about defunding the police simply means that we want to deconstruct a system that's been based on white supremacy, right? And that first and foremost, it means coming from a notion that police officers are servants and not masters and bosses of us. So once we then identify, how do we then refund, that is redistribute funding, that has to do with how do we retrain, how do we recruit, right? How do we set the standard for who can be employed? I think that's what we mean when we say defunding. We're saying that, look, it's just like any other agency. And I would say that the police agency has been the one agency, well, I was going to say it worked improperly, but as Attorney Minka and Bob McCarthy say, it's working just like it's designed to work. So let's not say that it's working, it's not working properly. But as far as, say, how it's supposed to cater to the mass of people, it's one of the few departments that has been allowed to work with such impunity and still be funded. If you had any other agency, and I would ask anybody on this panel, how many other agencies and agency workers have as many complaints as the police as a unit and police officers individually and are still allowed to be funded? And I think that's what and so the other thing I want to add to that is not only about how do we hire, how do we train, but also the transparency and evaluation. How many people on this, well, I know the people on this panel would know, but how many people generally know even how police officers are evaluated? Right? Are they evaluated the way teachers are evaluated? Are they evaluated the way doctors are evaluated? Are they evaluated the way lawyers are? Attorney Minka can speak to the fact that you can file a bar complaint against an attorney, and if you file a bar complaint against an attorney, that's almost as bad as, having him found guilty or something. Yet filing a complaint against a police officer means absolutely nothing in the current state of affairs. So we not only have to defund the agency, we have to remove the people who've been over the funding of the police department so that we can get a new cadre of folk who can not only identify funding, but then disseminate that funding through a whole new apparatus of how it's going to be instituted.
I want to take this last question on this item, and I want to split it between Attorney Minka and Baba. I love that name, I really love that name.
Brother Carter, tell them what Baba means.
Baba it simply means sir, Mr.
It means what?
It can mean Mr., it can mean father, it can mean sir. It's just a title.
It's cool, man. I just tell you. It's just cool. So let's bring this back. I want to bring this back, Attorney Minka. I want to bring it back to this discussion that we've had of what we would like to see. But let's bring it back to what we're facing. I think that we can all agree. I'm going to take some liberty here, and I can be totally wrong with this generalization. Trump has been a terrible president. Okay? He's just been a terrible president. But sometimes it takes Archie Bunker to bring about some change. Sometimes it does. I don't think that we can stand another 4 years of Archie Bunker. So my question is, as we use this term, defund, This guy is looking to strike an emotional vein with his racism, his bigotry, his hate, his incompetence. One of the things that he's been able to count on reliably are those individuals out there who subscribe to racism. Where, and this is starting with Attorney Meek, what are the political implications of this term defund in this current political environment? Attorney Meek.
What are the political implications of defund the police? That's what you asked?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I kind of want to go back to something that you, one minute. I kind of wanted to go back to something that was dealt with. First of all, defund the police, it is a vacuous notion. First of all, it means absolutely nothing. It means taking a small amount out of a police budget and claiming that the people will not be able to make the ultimate decisions about. And when I say the people decide, I do not mean some representative acting on behalf of their own authority. Ordinary black people and others, they can arrive on And when I say we live in a republic and not a democracy, democracy means majority rule. Professional political actors that are acting on somebody or acting on behalf of somebody, claiming to represent somebody. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm saying direct democracy. It's not some professional managers coming up with some kind of policies and letting people have a say or participate. Democracy is not participation. It is people, ordinary people, making a decision. Now, as far as the notion about what are the political implications of defund the police, the political implications of it is for it national level. The people who talk about the police benevolent society or the police union, people who talk about the white supremacist nature of the police, they don't talk about that in Jackson and in other predominantly black areas like Atlanta, Little Rock, Arkansas, and other states throughout the South, where black people administer racism more efficiently because they got a black face in a high place. And when black people see that, they racial state. White supremacy exists, yes it does, and we must fight against it.
Attorney Minka,
we live in the affirmative action empire in the ethnically plural police state.
Attorney Minka, you're constantly freezing. So what I don't know if you moved away from your access point or not, but you're part of what you've been saying we've missed. Some of it we missed because your internet was frozen. And so, Baba, what do you think? We're talking about this term of defunding.
Yeah, I think we have to. Again, I think we have to fully understand what Attorney Mika was saying, and the political ramifications of it would be decolonization. You have to fully decolonize those people who are oppressed by the current system. And I think what we have to make sure we do is understand that it's rooted in the colonization of Africa. The things that are going on here are and the reason why you asked earlier, the reason why is it that we're seeing it all over the world? Because colonization has dominated the whole world. Okay? And people are emotionally distraught because of the colonization, and seeing George Floyd take his last breath, seeing that 8 minutes and 46 seconds has brought out the emotions of so many people. But we have to understand, fully have to understand that, as I said earlier, and I stick by this, the starting point is to get rid of the police union. The power system, the power structure attacks unions all over the place. They attack all of the unions. They don't want unions, but they leave the police union alone. And so we have to include the police union in those attacks that they're going after, because, again, it's those political gains, those political perks that the police union have been able to get that creates the immunity that they enjoy, even though they're morally corrupt. So when we look at ending racism, we have to, again, if we're serious about ending racism, then we have to separate the races and let individual races.
You only have a baseball.
Because if Black Lives Matter, whether we like it or not, we have to prove it. We have to prove it to ourselves first before we can prove it to others, because respect starts with self. We have to be able to respect ourselves before we can demand respect from others. However, the system that we live in, the indoctrination that we get, that we call education, the social indoctrination that we get, prevents us from actually valuing ourselves, and does not allow others to value us. So we have to separate from this system so that we can learn to value ourselves. Once we value ourselves, we can demand that respect from the whole world. And in the process of doing that, we would set the example for decolonizing Africa, fully decolonizing Africa. Because right now it's still under colonization. That's why De Beers still own the diamond mines.
Guys, this has been an invigorating discussion, but I've saved Dr. Thompson for last, because on my way in today, CDC finally spoke up. The CDC said that the number of coronavirus infections in the United States is 10 times what's being reported. I think we're right at 2.5 million, somewhere near there, that we're reporting. That's what we see on television. But the CDC's model has estimated that to be over 25 million infections. They also said that the number of deaths that we've been told that has happened connected to coronavirus is probably 5 times higher, simply because they haven't counted homeless. They haven't counted individuals who died in nursing homes that didn't have the symptoms. They didn't have the symptoms, they were never tested. So our government, which is the process has been patchwork state by state, and every state's got different rules. Under some political pressure, some states have opened up before they were ready. Our fearless leader, our president, will not wear a mask. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm scared. I've been abiding by the rules, pretty much. But my wife tells me even that I go out too much. I just have to go get that beer, you know. And so, in the beginning, I didn't see us following the rules. I mean, us, black people. We were not wearing a mask. And we were not social distancing. Which led our producers to have one other question. And Dr. Thompson, they wanted that question to be put only to you.
Okay.
Why is social distancing so important?
Well, as we know, with social distancing, and sometimes referred to as physical distancing, and I'll use that term because, we can still be socially connected, but physically apart. And so what we really want is for people to practice the physical distancing. And so research has shown that by being 6 feet apart, that helps to reduce the spread of the infection. Now, remember the words I'm using is reduce. Okay, so that means that, and someone said on here, we all could be in contact with the virus, may actually have come in contact with it based on our immune systems, have no symptoms or be asymptomatic. But we know by research that by being 6 feet apart, and that's 2 arm lengths, if you need to have a measuring stick, that's 2 arm lengths from the next person. And so, or 2 chairs between another chair. And so we think about that because we know when we talk, and I use this example. I spoke to a group of young people on yesterday about this. When we talk, what sometimes happens? We may actually let out a little saliva, right? So in those droplets can be the virus. And so when that happens, we are now contributing to the spread. When I don't cover my nose and I'm breathing in and out, and I have those respiratory droplets once again, or I sneeze or I cough and I don't have the decency to do that into my elbow or my sleeve, and I do it openly, I have now just possibly exposed everyone. Not only just 6 feet, we know that those droplets can even go further. And so we understand that increases risk. We also understand that there are some that by research that show can have no symptoms at all. They can actually be having the virus, haven't been tested, but have no symptoms. And if they're not covering those areas where we could release these droplets, we could actually be spreading the virus. So the social distancing helps us to reduce the spread. What the masks do is they give us another form of protective measure in order to reduce the spread even further. And so yesterday I did a demonstration because I was doing it for some young people. Our masks are not to be worn around our neck like a collar. I have seen folks with their masks on their chin and behind their ear. It is actually meant to be over your nose and your mouth. And the purpose of that is because those are the gatekeepers of how respiratory droplets, bacteria, any kind of infections are transmitted. So we know that is a way of protection. And then the other thing is we have to make sure that even with all of our social distancing, with all of our masks, that we're still practicing proper hygiene. You still need to wash your hands. That's just a fundamental principle. Wash your hands. Use soap and water. Sing for 20 seconds or the birthday song. Make sure that you're washing them thoroughly. Don't just run that water up under there, no soap, just kind of running water. You're still not cleaning your hands. And one of the things that I think that most of us have realized during COVID-19, we probably touch our face more than we ever. We put our hands here, we put our eyes, we realize that we touch our face more than we ever realized until COVID came. And so the eyes is another way in which infections, because those are openings into the body. And so once those viruses are inside of the body, they grow, replicate, then we may manifest symptoms. But then we have a group that have no symptoms at all. So there could be days, and that's with any infection, where we actually have no symptoms. The other part to that is when we do have symptoms, and this is why your wife is probably saying, stay in. Because some people are still going out with symptoms, knowing that they're positive, still doing their regular day-to-day activities, not wearing a mask, not washing their hands. And so then that increases the risk of the spread. And so one thing that you mentioned that data, and I was listening to that right before the call as well. But we have that problem right here in Mississippi. I don't know if you all got the numbers for today. We have 1,092 cases that were reported June 24th. On June 22nd, we had 611 cases. We are 5 times greater in our case numbers, and that population of people are 18 to 29 years old. So we have a younger group of population who are out here not using social distancing, not practicing social distancing, not wearing a mask, not being protective. They go visit grandma who's 80 years old, whose immune system is not the greatest, who may also have chronic conditions. We just make grandma sick. So we have to even think about all of those things. Also thinking about, I like Mr. Barber brought up about immune systems, that we're eating healthy, eating properly, eating fruits and vegetables during this time. These are all the things that we tell people to do even in our regular flu season, making sure that we are taking the time to eat what we need to do, taking our vitamin D, vitamin C. And men on this call, you need vitamin D. It is also protective against prostate cancer. Thank you. It also has been shown to help with reduction for COVID-19, along with the other vitamins. And so we want to make sure that we're educating our people about all of these preventive measures that we can take. And it's simple. You can get masks. We're in our office because we want people to be protected. But we want you to know that you need to wear it properly in order for it to be effective. And so even if you can't get a mask, we all have an old towel or handkerchief or something. Like our grandmas used to have that handkerchief. Take a handkerchief, use that and protect yourself and practice social distancing. That's the easiest thing we can do. It's the most cost effective for this time period. It has prevention. Remember, we said reduction. Remember, COVID-19 is new to all of us. It came as a flood for everyone, even the health community. So we're still learning this, but please take the recommendations seriously during this time. Offer. We don't have a vaccine and don't look like one coming tomorrow. So we need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and those we love.
I'm looking for that face mask to make me look like the athlete that I really am.
That's right. You can actually, I was telling some of the young people yesterday, you can even color coordinate if that makes you look fly. So whatever it does for you to make sure that you're practicing.
Last one, Mr. McGinnis, you had your hand out.
Oh no, I was just amen into the vitamin D. I'm 50, and I think 2 years ago I got on the vitamin D because I do a biannual physical, and my numbers. I'm 50, and I'm not bragging. This takes a lot of work because I used to weigh 307 pounds and had a 52-inch waist, so I lost 90 pounds, 14 inches of my waist. And Brother Cox is laughing because he remember when I weighed 307 pounds and had a 52-inch waist. But like Dr. Thompson said, that particularly for black people, all my numbers were great. He said, man, you got the numbers of a 25-year-old. The problem is your vitamin D is too low. So the only thing I do is I take a vitamin D supplement, I take a multivitamin, and I started on the aspirin when I was 48. And those are the only 3 things I do with my eating healthy. So I was just amening, because a lot of our black people don't know that we naturally have that low vitamin D deficiency, and that's what then exasperates all of the other illnesses that we have. So I was just amening Dr. Thompson.
Absolutely. And Dr. Thompson, from my last meeting, I haven't gotten any better by keeping my hand away from my face. So that's part.
Dr. Gilly.
Yes.
Can I ask Dr. Thompson a question?
Sure.
Quick question, Dr. Thompson. My wife says that I'm rude because when I'm in the store, I tell people to put their mask over their doggone nose. Is that rude, Dr. Thompson?
That's not rude.
There we go.
Yourself and you are protecting others. And so that is not rude. We are our brother's keeper. And so we have to make sure. And so what I've been doing is carrying a few extra in my purse. And when I see someone, I say, well, I don't know if you have one of these, but I just want you to know I have an extra one. Here's one for you. And I would really like, and just kind of, sometimes it's all about just sharing with people why it is so important. We assume that everyone watches the news. We assume everyone has read this in the paper. We assume a lot of things, but sometimes assumptions can be misleading. And so it's so important that we educate and let people know. But you're not being rude. You're protecting your own health and the health of the others that you're around.
I want to, first of all, I want to do two things. I want to thank you guys for tonight. One of the things that I got from all of this was energy, enthusiasm, and dedication. And I want to thank you guys for sharing with us your experiences and your knowledge. And secondly, I also want to thank our producers because they allowed us to go over our time. We went way over our time. But the conversation was just that good. And I hope that the conversations that you're having with us tonight, that you're having in your community as well. Because one of the things that I want to accuse our community of is that we've not always been the best informed. And it's people like you that's going to help us change that. And by changing that, we can change some of these outcomes before some of us die. So I want to thank you guys so very, very much. And I saw Dr. Phillips come on. Doc, are you still there?
Ask him if his mic is muted. You might not know if
He is muted right now.
Okay. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys for being with us on Man Caves. And I hope that this will not be the only time that you participate, because you have a lot to give us. So I want to thank you. Until next time, it's Man Caves. That's produced by Women for Progress. And we want to thank them for giving us this opportunity to have this discussion. So good night.